2 Kings 22 to chapter 23, verse 30. These chapters cover the reign of King Josiah, boy king, began at 8 years old, one who would be the last good king of Judah. In his mid-20s, he started on a repair project, again, of the temple. And in the course of the repairs, the high priest informs the king, "We found the book of the law," which scholars tend to identify as specifically meaning the book of Deuteronomy. Now, again, we need to remember, we're so used to having the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, all together in one book, bound together. When you're done the book of Numbers, you just flip over the page and there's Deuteronomy. Not in the ancient world. They each would have been their own scroll. So they found the scroll of Deuteronomy, one they hadn't had for a while. Apparently, says something about the nature of the kingdom and the nature of how the temple was in disrepair. Josiah had the book read to him and immediately calls for his key staff to go to Huldah, a prophetess. Again, there's other prophets, but he sends for Huldah. Goes, "What is God wanting us to do?" And Huldah responds, God says, "Really, there's nothing for you to do, Josiah. Your heart is responsive to me." And so what you've read, again, they would have read Deuteronomy 28. If you are unfaithful, you're going to see this and this and this and this. And if you do not turn, you're going to see this. And if you do not turn, you're going to see this. And if you keep not turning, you're going to be in exile. And Josiah would have been, "Man, we are so close to that exile. What do you want me to do?" And God goes, "Your heart is responsive. I'm not going to bring the judgment down on the nation during your lifetime." Again, the nation was too far gone. It couldn't be a light to the nations, a light to the Gentiles from God's perspective anymore, at least not as they were currently constituted. They needed to go into exile so they could be revived. At this message, Josiah calls for the people to hear the covenant regulations, and then he goes about removing all sorts of pagan worship sites and leaders and settings. There's a huge list given by the editor of Kings, all devoted to different gods that Josiah kind of booted out. Again, rather than being a light to the nations, Judah, like Israel before, was being just like the other nations, following any and every god that promised them the moon and delivered nothing. On top of that, Josiah reinstitutes Passover observance. Now think about this. Passover is a core Jewish observance to this day. It's the one that Jesus transformed at the Last Supper into the observance that we know within the Christian church. We, Eucharist, the Last Supper, communion, the Lord's table, it's different names for it. Could you imagine attending a church that for 25 years, maybe 50 years, had never celebrated communion? Or imagine church that would never have celebrated Christmas or Easter. Passover is a core Jewish identity, ritual, celebration, festival. And Josiah reinstitutes this. That's the state of covenant relationship deterioration Judah had devolved to. It's like they hadn't celebrated Easter, like a church that hadn't celebrated Easter for 50 years. Josiah dies in a battle with the army of Egypt, which, if we read the account in Chronicles, God said, "Don't do that." Josiah didn't listen, leaving the kingdom to his son. Josiah is described as the king who came closest to loving God with his whole heart, mind, and soul. And again, that love was measured by covenant faithfulness. So how do we measure covenant faithfulness today? Actually, it's the same as back in the Old Covenant. The forms are a little different. We don't offer sacrifices, but at the root, it's love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said that's the summary of the law. That's what he taught us as his disciples. As you consider that for today, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious to you. And today would you know his peace. God bless.